I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, and Andrew Kuo does not take any days off. Mr. Andrew Kuo, how are you doing, buddy?
Amazing. Happy restart of the NBA 2020 season. What we've all been waiting for. The 8 games to finish off this wonderful journey of a season.
This is a slam dunk on you. You said it couldn't be done, and Adam Silver is windmill jamming on your soul.
That's right. The NBA is breaking Cookie's ankles because we said this was all for jokes. Jokes on us, Ben.
Adam Silver, king. He did it. They beat COVID.
0 positive cases, which is incredible.
Look, I did not think it was a great idea. The one thing that maybe we didn't account for was that America is so ill-prepared that even somewhat cautionary measures make a big difference.
Yeah, just like covering your face, staying away from other people.
Well, it's like 10% of the players had COVID already. So going into an environment where you're being tested seemed to have a positive effect on the 10% that already had it.
I wish they would slow down testing so there would be negative positive results, I guess.
But yes, all good so far in terms of COVID. There are no cases. The season's going to start today. We've got the battle for Los Angeles being held in a bubble in Florida.
I like how people try to shame Big Lou King and Rashawn Holmes and trying to compare their indiscretions. I'm like, they just acted normal. Just forget about it. Like, did they quarantine? Are they good? Okay, let's just do it. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm excited. I still think they should probably, if they canceled it at any point, it would be okay. No sin bin, but baseball has run into a lot of issues, but they're not in a bub. They're not enjoying delicious stacks of burgers in a bub. They're traveling to other cities, and your boy Derek Jeter and his Marlins already got.
Yeah, the plan of going into other cities and moving around is a lot more ambitious from a preventative measure.
Yeah.
Like the bubble itself so far, as long as they're testing people a lot and they're limiting the contact between, the public and the players, at least at this point, that's where the risk seems like it's going to come from, right? And they're planning on doing this for 3 months. It's been a couple weeks, so we'll see. But thus far, the results have not been positive, so to speak.
Yeah. I got hopes for this bub, man. This season's gonna last a long time. They're saying like Rondo has a chance of coming back, and he was 6 to 8 weeks, right? So let's see. This is gonna be the start of something interesting, or maybe uneventful, which would be greater.
How do you feel about the day games?
I am okay with it only because we're stuck at home, allegedly stuck at home, grounded. I prefer night games. I like the event of the night game. Back before COVID, when they would have first round games like on Saturday afternoons. It's kind of a bummer, right?
It's strange because I agree. I associate watching basketball on weekdays with 7 p.m., 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And summer I associate with the Olympics. I'm sorry, midday. Sorry, I associate with the Olympics. And there's something about like the international play because they're in Korea or something. You're like, oh, it's on at a different time.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I think if I'm the NBA, I would do the same. I think I would be doing what they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, tonight's games are fairly normal.
Yeah.
You got a 6:30 start and a 9 o'clock start.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't want it to be Vegas Summer League. I just thought it might be, but it's interesting. Like,
Yeah, Summer League. Yes, that's what I was trying to get to. Yeah.
oh yeah, footy fans, soccer fans, European football fans, like have a whole tradition of watching during the day, and I think that's really awesome. I'm just not used to it. Yeah, I like the spectacle of like a movie night kind of for the NBA.
That said, part of that is because we're used to just flipping around on League Pass and stuff. You know, looking at tomorrow's schedule, you got a 2:30, a 4 o'clock, another 4 o'clock, a 6:30. That's kind of nice. Kind of nice.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do this.
You know, for all the criticism I think we've justifiably given the NBA as an organization, like, shout out to the players. Because that's who we wanted to see. You know,
Oh, man.
like this is what it's about. We're not excited that basketball is back as a like professional sport. I'm excited to see these guys because they're the best in the world at what they do.
For sure. I am 65% excited to see them, 35% worried about them. Like, these are my favorite dudes that I've never met. Like, I hope they're taken care of. And, I like Adam Silver. So let's see.
If I'm not sharp today, I got to chalk it up to a poor night's sleep.
Why? What happened?
So I woke up yesterday morning with like a nasty bite on my leg.
Like a spider bite?
It was not a mosquito bite, which I'm obviously familiar with. So I assumed spider bite, which I'm thinking is correct. So I come home yesterday, and there's a spider, and it's a big, weird-looking spider sitting on my ceiling. And I'm like, there it is. He's the guy who bit me. So I try to kind of whip him with a dish rag because it was too high to
As you do, yeah.
to get him. And I did it pretty hard, but as I hit him, he went flying somewhere. So I don't know if he was killed or grievously wounded or unharmed and just leapt away. I have no idea. And then I couldn't find him. So I've got this bite on my leg that's kind of turning into a bruise.
Wow.
And the spider is somewhere in my house, and I don't know if he's alive or dead and now wants revenge. So I slept. I slept fitfully because any little the fan would blow a little, dust bunny, and I'd be like, there he is.
No,
So I was very on edge about this war within my own home against a spider, and I looked up what he is, and he's a poisonous spider.
Oh, really? You ID'd him?
Yeah.
That sucks, man.
Tarantula. No, but it actually is a poisonous spider.
Man, spiders they're very controversial creatures. A lot of people, they're beneficial in a lot of ways and deadly in other ways, and just annoying in most ways.
I am a big spider enthusiast in terms of have no problem with them, try to avoid killing them, but come on, dude, giving me a bruise on my leg, not cool.
Yeah. There was a summer, a terrifying, harrowing summer in my apartment where they were doing construction. They were digging a subway tunnel, I think, near my house. And it was roach season, man. It just awoken.
Oh, God.
Woke up all the roaches in my neighborhood. And I got 2 cats, and they were doing their job. But every time I came home or every time I looked up, there'd be a big New York City water bug, chilling. I could not sleep. But since I have cats, I don't like to use pesticides in general. I think pesticides are really scary, maybe even scarier than the roaches. But I ended up getting those little roach hotels, and they were gone in an hour. It was terrifying. I could hear them in the middle of the night going into the hotels. I don't know why they call them hotels, because it's right.
Well, after the hotel, was it the after party?
After the pizza party was another pizza party.
And then perhaps some sort of hotel lobby?
Yeah. Yeah, they were just gone. But my cats did a great job. Maybe you should get a companion, a feline companion.
Wow, the cure is worse than the disease.
Oh, you don't like cats, huh?
I'm allergic.
Oh.
Give me spider bites all day.
Well, you're allergic to those too.
I know.
Cats aren't defined as poisonous. Or maybe they should be.
I mean, that cat dander, man.
Yo, it gets everywhere. I'm saying there's no avoiding that stuff. It's a dander zone over here. Welcome to the dander zone.
It's just terrible. This is like I apologize to any of our dear listeners, especially
Oh, do you?
Patreon subscribers.
Yeah.
Who I really apologize to for this next anecdote. If you are arachnophobic, but my brother went to put on his COVID mask, and he was in the Adirondacks, and he lifted it up and was about to put it on his face, and there was a spider that was like the size of like a silver dollar in it.
That sucks. I
Imagine-
hate
just
that story.
I know, that's why I was apologizing.
I hate
it's
it.
so awful, just strapping a spider to your face.
I gave your story a shot, and I hate it.
No, it's so horrifying.
That's worse than a scorpion in a cowboy boot.
He sent me a photo of the spider. It was so enormous. Just like,
Oh, fuck that.
it's
Fuck
a,
that.
Oh, it's a terrible story. It's like that scene from 1984. They like strap a rat to his face with a cage.
At least a rat is nice and furry and maybe can cook ratatouille and delicious French treats. Spider can't do anything.
I hate to have a rat attached to my face via a cage.
Would you rather have a rat attached to your face or a bunch of spiders all over your face? This sucks.
No, what is this pod?
Some Joe Rogan Fear Factory business.
If we're going to talk about horrible shit, this, I'm not sure if this actually has been done, but it was always used as a threat. Was that sorry, listeners. Sorry. Sorry. Is that you would tie someone down and you would put a rat on their stomach. I guess you could use a mouse, but a rat ideally.
So
is
D'Angelo
scarier.
Russell, go on.
And then you put a like metal container on top of it. And then you use a blowtorch or flames to heat up the metal, which makes the rat panic and then start digging.
I hate this.
Sorry, everyone. I apologize. There was a rap video from I forget who it was. It was like 2 years ago where they kind of did that in the video. They didn't show it explicitly, but that's what they were doing. And I was like, oh wow, you guys know about that? That's scary.
That's too much effort for something simple. Like just shiv someone, just stab someone. I am
I
also
thought you were an artist.
I am also inexplicably pro rat. I think rats are amazing creatures, and just because they're dirty in New York City, because it's really dirty, like they don't want to be covered in garbage. They're hungry. They're awesome animals. I don't mind their tails. They're smart, and they're really lovable to me.
I'm not anti-rat either. I'm anti a rat underneath a metal dish being heated up and compelled to tunnel his way into my body. But other than that, rats are cool.
Yeah, I don't. Would a rat have an instinct to dig through flesh?
Yes,
If it was
that's the theory. Because they're hot. They're just trying to go somewhere.
right.
Anyway, I'm sorry about that. I didn't
Yes.
mean to do that. The spider and that, just a really, really terrible way to start off. Otherwise, we got a lot of work to do to make this a perfect pod, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. We got to come back from 03 at this point.
Okay, so let's see. Yes,
Unfortunate deaths.
Patreons get early access, and we have a new shirt out.
Yep.
2 new shirts that are Sixers oriented. One is Process Youth, and the other one is Practice Sucks. They're both available on cookieshoops.com.
Sixers youth, man. What an era. It's finally our process tee. We did it.
Vasily Misic referenced.
The streets wanted a Micic shirt, and we rang the bell.
The Misic moment. In other Philly news, rest in peace to Malik B from the legendary Roots crew. I'm not sure how he passed away, but that was the sad news yesterday. Talented rapper. Has not been a part of the group in some time, but was one of the founding members. Were you a Roots fan?
Yeah. Illadev Half-Life
that
for
wasn't
sure.
that convincing.
I'm 50-50 on them. I really enjoyed them until I did not enjoy them at all. Maybe it was my move away from conscious rap. Also, live drumming kind of doesn't work for me, and this is something I've had to explain for like my whole music listening life. I think when you have sampling and live drumming, when you have sampling and you can hear people like DJ Premier, electronic musicians, their use of beats, it's hard for me to go back and watch somebody like hit the skins, because there's like an inherent flaw, and it doesn't like, I'm getting weird about this, but it doesn't like tip the cap to the medium enough. It's like, oh, we don't want to go back to rock. We want to propel into the future. We don't want to step back. That said, the Roots had a run, man, that is unprecedented.
If I'm trying to recall how the Roots made their music, I feel like they would sample their own drums and then program them. But live, obviously, they were using, I think it was Kamal was on the drums.
Yeah, and I got into a debate with someone on Twitter about Portishead. Love Portishead, but the live Roseland record to me was unlistenable because it was with an orchestra and live drums, and I just didn't enjoy it. Shout out to Questlove, who has like had some real staying power in our zone.
I think the Roots, I loved the Do You Want More? I loved Illadelph Half-Life.
Those are good.
If I was looking at the list of their albums, I think Phrenology was kind of when they lost me. It was that a couple albums into there. I think I think I love like 3 or 4 of their albums though, or really, I was really into the Roots when they first came out. But I'm with you though, the rockist sort of take on the Roots, elevating the form of rap via live music. I don't know that they pushed that idea, but it was kind of thrust on them, and I never loved that.
Yeah, like I always want things to move like what the Tribe Called Quest tried with the Love Movement. I mean, it ages well, but the move forward I thought was really interesting. The Roots, I understand the majority of people want like the live organic sound, and Things Fall Apart is a great record, and probably the closest record to like pop success. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I thought that was a real big moment in music. But they've always reminded me of like a sepia toned view of rap music.
I agree, and part of that was the era. You had groups like De La Soul and the Roots, Tribe to an extent, really trying to draw a line in the sand about what was hip hop and what wasn't. Mm-hmm. And it was also, you had the rise of Puff and the shiny suit era. So it was very easy to pick out enemies. Oh, these guys are talking about the mafia and money and drugs, and that's not real rap, because real rap's about MCs and stages and mics, whatever the case. It was these arbitrary yardsticks about what you were allowed to talk about. Like, well, Cool G Rap can talk about that stuff because we like him, but Mace can't because we don't like Mace.
Maybe this was the line in the sand that we were all confronted with. You're right. Like, that crew had a set of rules that you should, regard, when listening to rap, when making music and all this stuff. Like, we always joke about like the 27 elements of hip hop. Like, that was a thing that I think the Roots were involved with, or Proxy too. I just really love like the Dapper Dan, Hype Williams, Puffy thing. That thing was really appealing to me. The Locks. And then stuff was going on down south that was new to my ears. Like, it was just a really amazing time for music, and the Roots were so solid and high quality, and they were good at rapping, good at producing sounds, and good at presenting their point of view, and it just wasn't where my brain was going.
Yeah, for me, I think I would say Do You Want More, Illadelph Half-Life, and Things Fall Apart are all like classic albums to me.
For sure, those are up there, and I'm not even mad at anyone who likes the Roots. They're awesome.
Oh no, of course not. What's funny is, I think the word you used was proxy, and there is some truth to that, because when you look at like Malik B, he was kind of just a street rapper. Beanie Siegel did songs with them.
Ooh, I
They,
love Beanie.
the Roots, the music they made, Black Thought kind of just rapped about rapping.
He's very proficient, but very much a rapper.
But he was, I mean, there was some judginess and stuff to the Roots, but it was, it was more of like who they were associated with. Or maybe it was Questlove kind of being on that side. But as a group and musically, this is just, I would have to go back and listen to it and be like, were they being really judgy about other stuff? But I don't know. As a group, they were more sort of emblematic
Yeah.
of that sort of schism, maybe, than the music they actually made.
Yeah, and when you say judgy, I think in terms of like just record collectors who have opinions, and maybe the idea of looking backwards with a project than looking forwards. And this, like, it's like a 50-50 split. When you hear something like, oh, is this singer, rapper, producer looking back or looking forward? There's always kind of, for example, I think Taylor Swift kind of looks both ways in her new album. Phoebe Bridgers maybe looks a little backwards, and it all works. Does it align with my point of view at the time is the question. And at the time, I thought there was such an opportunity for stuff. And then the Roots came out and kind of was like, guys, remember to do your homework. And I'm like, right.
To me, they definitely did that. But I think a misstep for them, even though it was a hit. And like technically, I think a good song. But like, what they do to me just sort of rubbed me the wrong way. It was a video making fun of like baller rappers and, champagne and models. And it was like the principles of true hip hop have been forsaken. It's all contractual and about money making. You're just like, it was that era, but that was a thing. It was like, if people were talking about the current climate right now, they'd be talking about cancel culture. Back then in rap, the climate was talking about real hip hop versus commercial mainstream rap.
Yeah.
And it was the sellout conversation that every art form has. And that's when it took place in hip hop.
For sure. And I'm glad we're past that era. I always say that debate kind of like derailed my whole life. Like the idea of selling out. I believe, like, I can't speak for millennials or Zoomers, but they might look at Gen X and be like, you guys are a little too tranquil because you guys were all worried about either selling out or like not doing things ethically. Just like do your thing, because now Questlove is on TV every night, playing in a late night band, which is great. But like,
There were some big moments though, right? In terms of that debate. And Biggie was part of that. Puffy was part of that. Nas's second album fit really neatly into that, where it was,
his last good album.
But it was like the rapper, like this is our guy, the future of hip hop, this young guy who's like Rakim, he's like Kool G Rap and all this stuff. And then he had track masters doing his beats, and it felt so different from Illmatic in terms of sonics. It was like very clean and crisp, and it had a Dre production, and that was like, wait a minute, we've lost our guy. And I feel like that kind of haunted Nas.
Oh, 100%. Like, yeah, and he's still trying to make amends for that, right? Like, ever since, he's been trying to redefine himself as the previous Nas, as Illmatic Nas.
I mean, the phrase "Nasty Nas is back" is literally a response to criticism from his second album. That is really good. He was rapping his ass off on it, and it turned him into a superstar.
Yeah, it turned into a pop star, right? And it got him enough space in order to create album after album after album, because that was a bona fide hit, right? Like, that record produced songs that we still know all the words for. And it makes me think of Wu-Tang Clan and how they kind of skirted all this, because Bobby Digital was, I think, something that the RZA had wanted to do for a long time. But no one accuses the Wu-Tang of selling out ever, even though, like, they tried.
I don't know. I think later they did with songs like Gravel Pit and stuff. But
I love that video.
But in their heyday, they were pretty remarkable for mostly just doing what they did. You know, you look at what was it called? What was the huge double album they put out? Wu-Tang Forever.
Forever. Yeah,
Just
man.
like a sprawling album with like mediocre beats and no hooks. Just like ridiculous.
I mean, I will take all the failings of that record just for the lead-in to that record. I probably have never been that excited for an album since. Like, the lead-in to Wu-Tang Forever was palpable, where I was in Providence and in New York at the time. Like, and then the video came out and Master Killer opened, and it just felt like like the tectonic plates of music were shifting, like in real time. It was a very exciting drop, I thought. And then when we heard the album, when we all waited in line at midnight at Tower Records to buy this record, and we went home and listened to it at like 1 a.m., we were just like, it's good.
Yeah,
We
I don't
like
even,
it.
Yeah, I don't dislike the album.
Yeah.
There's stuff I enjoy on it, but it's not one that I return to often.
No.
Maybe it would be good for that, because I can't really go back and listen to like
The
first
W is
Wu-Tang album.
Iron Flag is listenable. Those are good records. The W is good. It's so funny that we don't care about that album Martin Scully bought for $1 million, and the story was so interesting, and it's like, anybody actually want to listen to that?
What's kind of, it makes sense, but it's also sad, is that guys like Ghostface and Raekwon are still putting out music. We just don't have it on our map. I don't know if it's good or bad, but they're still doing it. Like,
It's
you go to
excellent.
you go to their Spotify page and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, Ghostface like put an album out last year.
Yeah,
or,
Ghost.
or Raekwon, or all these guys, they're still doing stuff.
I got into this debate. I don't know if we had this debate, but one of my friends has posed a question: who is the best New York City rapper in the last 20 years? Would it? I mean, Jay. I believe his peak kind of got in there, and the debate was basically, is it Ghost or Fabulous? And Ghost is tremendous, man. He came out of the Wu-Tang Clan as like a real consistently great artist, I thought.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite of all time. I would put Cameron ahead of Fabulous, though, personally.
Yeah, Cam burned brighter, but Fab, just his music, Fab really held it down, man. I mean, we've talked about Fab, so.
I like that I accidentally started playing The Nature of the Threat.
Oh man,
Oh, let freedom ring to the buckshot.
yeah, but
Sorry, it's that spider bite kicking in.
yeah. But yeah, rest in peace to Malik B, man. Like, only 47 years old, young man. I don't know how he died either, and it's really none of my damn business. And it's sad to have, like, I don't know what he's been up to for the last few years, but that sucks, man.
Yeah, one thing that, so much stuff feels like it was of a different era now for many reasons. But in the early 2000s, late 90s, at Wetlands in New York City, which was a fabled music venue that closed down also in the early 2000s, like not that long after Tramps and a few of those other places. But there was a party called Black Lily, and the Roots hosted it, and it was Sunday nights. It was free. It was like, you could get a cheap beer there on Miller High Life or something. But you would have Quest on the drums, Scott Storch on the keyboards. You'd have like Erykah Badu, Macy Gray, Common, anyone who was part of that scene as it was rising up via Philly for the most part. Mm-hmm. But Philly's Most Wanted, Most Def, they would just come through and sort of jam on Sunday nights, and it was really an amazing thing to have. This is clearly far pre-social media, so it was like no one saw footage of it, no one knew it was happening. It was not a huge crowd. It was a pretty big, the venue was sizable and it would get a good audience in there, but kind of a really wild thing to have that, like, neo soul rising up and being popular, and just having the ability to see them free almost on a weekly basis. And I know they did it in Philly at this place called the Five Spot too.
Yeah, that era was, and that scene was a complete blind spot for me at the time. I don't think that registered in my zone, but to think about it now, yeah, it's pretty remarkable, right? Like it really encapsulated like a movement, right? Like it was something people cared about and a lot of people were doing.
It was just interesting when you think about how cohesive that scene was in that small period of time. Mm-hmm. And you had other groups that were associated with them, whether it was like, I don't know, Jaguar Wright and the Jazzy Fat Nasties. It was just like this.
I remember them.
It was the same groups and same people all the time. And you'd go there and, it was right when Scott Storch was kind of blowing up as a producer. So he'd start doing the keys from Forgot About Dre. And you're like, this is kind of bizarre. There's the guy who did this and Questlove, and they're just letting people get on stage and do poetry or freestyle, and then like Common would come out. It was kind of nuts.
Yeah, and that had an influence, but it didn't have the influence I thought it would. I thought it would create more bands or more artists like The Roots and Common, but it ends up being like the NBA All-Star announcing of the starting lineup, and it infiltrates our pop culture like late night TV. It infiltrates it to a point where it's just like, it's even better than having another Roots 2, more Roots, right? And it's gotten to a place where it's a part of our like ether, pardon the pun. And I think it's right that scene fulfilled its promise. I think
it was fulfilled. Sorry,
what is going on?
I'm out of water.
Nice.
I think that scene was fulfilled in many ways by Drake.
Oh, interesting.
Because if you think of the sound of neo soul, it is kind of similar to what Drake does. I mean, his is clearly more synthetic and like the detuned sound, but it's not that different. And I know Drake was listening to that stuff. I know he listened to Little Brother, who was associated with that entire thing, and he's credited them, and like Fonte specifically, with sort of being influences. So it kind of makes sense. But I've always thought that the Drake kind of sing-songy with like very spacey ambient beats, that it was always kind of the odd child of neo soul.
Oh, interesting. I can see that. I have not connected those dots, but Drake to me is right. Like we only care about what we care about. Like to me, Drake was such a great amalgamation of like what I cared about at the time, which was like singers, songwriters, and maybe electronic producers. And Drake kind of came together and made like this beast of a pop star, which I cared maybe the most about. Like, I don't know, man. Like Drake had a 10-year run where he just like dominated my brain. But yeah, I hear that for sure. And Drake has those interests. I think he's definitely associated with a lot of those artists.
I mean, the Drake Fonte thing is real though. Like that's 100% real. It's not like, oh, I think he sounded like him. I know that's the case.
Yeah. Well, Drake is the master chameleon, right? He stands next to a plaid wall and turns plaid. And then he moves to a stripe wall and kind of gets those stripes. Like, I love that about him. I think that's a skill.
Ooh, I rap like the Migos now.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's what I wish the Native Tongues like crew, I wish they had evolved further. I think the last iteration of them, like I was not a big Dilla fan, but Dilla was onto something maybe, but tragically passed away. But I don't know, that was the beginning of something. And I think of maybe, you know what, it's like something, now it's really old, but like something like Quasimodo, Madlib kind of took that into a direction I really, really love.
Listening to stuff now, you see some of those influences, but I feel like the fact that there isn't a schism between what is real and what is not is so refreshing.
Yeah.
It's just so nice that you don't have to care.
Yeah. I mean, people still try to bring this, they put down their barbecue tongs. They make sure nothing's on the grill that would burn, and they try to bring this up, but like Shout out to the Zoomers we like and the Millennials we like and all of tranquil Gen X, but like enough.
Part of it is that the Gen X group, for the most part, has like opted out of listening to Little Xan or Playboy Cardi. That's just not something that they're into, so they don't have strong takes.
Right. They don't have strong takes about anything. They're the Celestial Seasonings bear, man. They're the trailblazer. Sorry, I passed out.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Where the hell were we? All I know is Wetlands closed 20 years ago.
I saw a lot of good punk shows at Wetlands. It's crazy. Firehose, Superchunk. Did I see Fugazi at Wetlands? Man, it's all a blur. It was a long ass time ago.
Other things closing. I saw Eater had put up a running list of the casualties of COVID or, just this current environment. We're going to attribute them all to COVID, which makes total sense because that's when they closed down. But there might have been ones that just weren't surviving anyway. Places, have
Odessa.
places were struggling to begin with. Yeah,
Yeah.
like Odessa closed 3 times.
Yeah.
I feel like. But I found out like Rusty Knot closed. Bedford Cheese closed. That was kind of surprising to me.
That is surprising. All locations?
Just they only had 2. The one in the city is still open. But the flagship they moved that was in Williamsburg. That was a nice spot. I really, it was expensive, but it was kind of a one of the few things where like this neighborhood got gentrified, but this is a nice thing to have, a place to get really good cheese from knowledgeable people. So that actually weirdly, I was like, oh wow, that's fucked.
Those limited edition lunchtime sandwiches were worth seeing at, like, if you were a little late, 2 p.m. and you were near Bedford Cheese, you could walk in and see if they had a couple of those left over.
Yeah, a place that was in the neighborhood where I lived, where you could grab, a little prosciutto, a little, a little comp, a baguette, and you're like, you're good to go.
That bourgeois life. Yes.
Yeah,
no, I
that's what
enjoy
I'm
that
saying.
stuff.
And if you didn't have a lot of money, it was still a place that you could go and spend, $20 and feel lavish.
Yeah, it wasn't like the West Village. It was still like you could do your thing there on a budget. But
So I mean, a little quarter pound of this, a little quarter pound of that. It's expensive, but it's like really good stuff, and you felt content that the people were telling you what this is like. They would let you taste it. Anyway, I felt some type of way about Bedford Cheese, as you said. Bougie, yes, but also it had been in Williamsburg kind of for the whole come up.
yeah. And like, shout out to hipster culture, which I am into. I thought Williamsburg was awesome. It produced a lot of things that I still look back and enjoy, musically, food wise. Like our whole thing was influenced by this era. And to hear that the Rusty Knot and Bedford Cheese, 2 beacons of like hipster ire or enjoyment, are gone, and like, time is undefeated, man. Like, yeah, you're right. This could be COVID related, but these 2 establishments did their thing. Like, they did it.
But also with Bedford Cheese, there is no doubt in my mind that the opening of Whole Foods shellacked them at that location.
Yeah.
Because even as someone who tried not to do that and tried to go to Bedford Cheese, if you just wanted one thing and you were already shopping, it was just too tempting. Just, all right, let me just grab this real quick and then skip myself a trip over to Bedford Cheese. So I get it. But I think that was actually as bad as COVID for them.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God. And this is where, like, I always say this, but like, I think as a community really need our lawmakers to do smart things. And, there's many ways to view of smart things, but the way like something like Subway sandwiches had their downfall was, if you wanted to franchise, you can franchise anywhere. And other fast food restaurants would be like, you can't really franchise within like 100 feet, a mile, whatever, wherever you are, because it'll cannibalize the business and weaken our brand. And I feel like proximity is such a huge deal in New York. We've seen bodegas come under siege from 7-Eleven, right? And it's really hurt bodegas because 7-Eleven has the backing to dominate and sustain that a mom and pop bodega, maybe not. And to see Bedford cheese go down, not only because of COVID, but the proxy to other options is just so real. You could just see it.
I mean, defund Whist, but if you look at that particular block, right? If you go back 10 years, or even, let's say 6, 7 years, whatever, you had Bedford cheese, you had a small independent kitchenware store that was called Whisk, and I'm not saying a defund Whisk.
I've shopped there for sure.
And you also had the old school pharmacy that kind of paid attention to its clientele and put on, like a Joy Division satellite cable channel in the place. So everyone was sort of like, oh, this is for us.
Catbird is a whole thing.
But, right, so you had that, but that intersection right there, and then you look at it, you're like, okay, the culinary store that they had to bounce because their rent went up to $20,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Then you had Bedford cheese get Whole Foods opened across the street, and then they were moved down the block, and then they closed. And then you had that pharmacy have a Dwayne Reed open literally across the street, and then they closed. It's like, none of these are surprising outcomes, and they have all conspired to make that block garbage. Those were cool, interesting things that had been there and created identity, and now you have Whole Food, you have a Dwayne Reed, and you have a bunch of banks. Like that's in that intersection itself really compartmentalizes like what happened to that neighborhood and what we're at risk at right now for all these places in New York. That the little guys, the ones who are on a shoestring, the ones who are independently operated and owned, are jeopardized, while Dwayne Reed or Subway or places with multi-billion-dollar backings can weather this storm differently.
Yeah, and this idea goes back maybe like to every generation in America, and this story has been told by every generation. And I remember even specifically we were talking about rap music, like Fat Beats was the epicenter of the rap world in New York, kind of, I think. And they were outdone by like digital and also Tower Records before digital. Like there was always a threat to their business being like, buy this at Fat Beats because they need the business, don't buy it at Tower. And then Tower turns into the sympathetic one. I always think about the Sunshine Theater on Houston Street in the East Village. I remember when it went up and people were like, there goes the neighborhood, like what is this doing here? It's right next to like the businesses that have been here for 20 years. This is awful. And then it was up for like over a decade, and it came down, and people were like, oh, that's awful, that's one of our sacred cows, like how dare. So it's like,
have you heard Spike Hill is going down? The meatball shop could be next.
Just wait 15 years when Amazon folds Whole Foods because they don't feel like it anymore, and people are like, I remember I just walked down Bedford and there was Whole Foods. Now we have Trader Joe's. I don't know, like a new thing to get mad at. And
Trader Joe, wasn't he one of the members of like a late Bad Boy group? Gorilla Zoe.
Gorilla Zoe. This is ZOE. I think he manned the paint for the Charlotte Hornets.
But fortunately, we don't have to worry about any of this because we can just call off the next election and we're going to put federal troops in every city. Everything is great right now.
I don't understand how we're going to have an election when there's so much rampant fraud. And even though I don't believe the coronavirus exists, no one's going to go to these polls because they say it's dangerous.
So,
voting.
So your boy Trump has been wiling out.
My dude, what's he been saying? I have not.
Well, first they sent feds from like Homeland Security and a bunch of other agents into Portland where they're waging war with protesters. And that obviously raises a few eyebrows because why the fuck are there feds there? And one of the takeaways here from people, the speculation, is that this is a trial balloon or a test case for November, where Trump would send federal forces to quell uprisings after he steals an election or refuses to step down. So that's been one interpretation of Operation Legacy, which is threatening to send feds and has sent feds into places around the country, and they are all predominantly cities where there is a population that is unfriendly to Donald Trump. And today, he tweeted out that we should probably delay the election. Do you see this as uniquely menacing? Is this like, in your mind, like a very foreboding set of circumstances?
Not yet, because he can't do anything to change that. But I said that about coronavirus when we talked about it in February. I'm like, the world's experts can handle this, right? Let's go back to talking about basketball. So, anything can happen, as we've seen in the last year. And sometimes the most logical thing is the thing that happens. And maybe a high probability of Trump trying to do something will be what we see. And it should not be shocking to us because he's given us fair warning. But he doesn't have the power to legislate that move to delay an election. I think the Senate and the House have to agree on it, I believe. And it might even come down to a Supreme Court decision. I'm not sure. But Trump only cares about his election. And I'm not sure if he even cares about being president. He cares about respect and being right. So he's going to do all this awful stuff. And, Portland is not quite an issue. It's only like a couple blocks, and it's escalated by his response. And, of course, when you send in federal troops, like, there's a threat, and it's going to optically look terrible, and he wants to mind those optics. I am just so tired of taking the bait here, but real people's lives are affected, so we have to kind of engage at the same time.
I think I'm pretty much with you on all of that. I don't look at Portland or Operation Legend, yeah, Acura Legend, as necessarily being testing for November. I think he's trying to win the election versus preparing to lose it, or at least he has been.
Yeah.
And that's because if he sends in federal troops, they represent him. And then they're going to war with protesters, and there's drama in the streets, and he wants to be law and order, and he's tried to tie Biden laughably to like anarchists. And you're just like, no, this is what America's going to look like if Biden's president. You're like, but this is what it looks like in your president.
You can't punch a shadow. There's no grabbing a hologram. Biden's that slippery vibe that he can't grasp.
But it's like, look at this. This is Joe Biden's America as I am president. Like the logic doesn't quite follow. Like, keep me as coach because this garbage you're seeing on the court right now, that's what's going to happen if you fire me.
Yeah. I have never seen a dumber human in front of a camera in my life. I can't think of a single one other than our president of the United States. He doesn't even know how to be devious, which is, I'm so grateful for that, because if he was smart at this, we'd be in big trouble.
He can't maintain the illusion of caring about anything for long enough to even convince the most credulous members of the media. They'll still trot out, it looks a newly sobered president. Today was the day, of course, that he became presidential. And then the next day he's like, call off the election.
I counted from backwards by 7. Can you?
But again, look, I get the concern that sending in the feds is ominous because he is a fascist and he is surrounded by fascists, and I
don't even believe that. That's giving him too much credit.
Well, what I mean is he doesn't care about democracy or laws as much as what he can get away with. He certainly would not have any problem with saying, cancel the election. I'm just going to be president forever. Like, that doesn't bother him.
Oh, no. If Mitch McConnell was like, hey, we're going to make you a dictator like your boy in China, and your daughter is going to succeed you, and we'll have no more elections. It'll just be Trump. Are you cool with that? He'd be like, yes, sign me up.
But what I'm exactly 100%. That's who he is. That's why I mean he's a fascist. Like, he doesn't believe in anything other than him winning and him controlling power. So he is, of course, dangerous in that regard. And I understand the concern about it, but I do think he is still trying to win the election. He wants strife in the streets of America to draw a distinction between him, the man of law and order, and the Democrats. That's because he doesn't have anything else to run on. The country is in the toilet. So he's like, well, maybe I put it more in the toilet, and then I can rally people to my side, which is going to be pro cops and pro army, versus Biden. Like, he's trying to create an issue that isn't even an issue. And it doesn't work with cops because the cops aren't him. Yeah. But the feds, they can be him. And people will say, fuck Trump, fuck Trump. So it's what you said, like, let's not take the bait. I think we should be publicizing this stuff and criticizing it and drawing attention to it. But, like, let's not create, like, the war of the people versus the feds if we can help it.
Exactly.
Just because this is his goal, to change the conversation away from the economy and COVID and how much he has bungled this country, and him being a completely inept president that has windmilled everything he's ever touched into a toilet in his life, into, like, well, who's right here? Is it the protesters or is it the feds? Who's right? Who's wrong? Like, that's not the conversation right now.
Yeah, like LeBron James is getting warmed up for maybe another championship run. We got 2 top 10 players in Philly ready. But is Paul Pierce a top player?
Like, yeah, it's him trying to win this election by changing the conversation. And then the numbers came out today showing the crumbling of the economy, and that's why he's out there yelling, like, delay the election, because he wants a vaccine to hit so he can try to get a popularity back. He's going to lose this election. He knows it. He's going to get trounced, I think.
And like the golden gun that he was gonna shoot, Putin over there is like, oh, I'm gonna have a vaccine in a week, and Trump's like, that was my move, but it was gonna be October. It's like, no, I lost again. But
right. So I think he's looking at it and saying, like, shit, if I don't have a vaccine and the economy is still tanking, I am 100% cooked. So I think that's why he's saying to push it back, and that mail-in is a fraud. Does he have the capability of saying, let's turn this democracy into a totalitarian state? Absolutely. But I still think he's fixated on winning it versus what to do when he loses.
Yeah, let's not overestimate any part of him. Let's move these goalposts again every day, because I don't think he even understands the premise of a dictatorship. I think all he hears is like, you could still be the focus of attention. He's like, I'll take that at any cost.
I mean, I think he understands the premise of a dictatorship and that he likes dictators and he would like to be one a la Putin. He's like, Putin's cool. He rides horses. He gets to stay in power and does whatever he wants. Like, I would enjoy that. But I also don't think he is at that point yet where he's saying, it's time for me to end this experiment of democracy in America and plunge us into a civil war. I think he's just trying to win the election for now.
Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's not capable of doing all that other type of stuff. But for the moment, I think it's worth countering these things that he's saying and talking about them and making sure that we're all aligned on the same page, that that's not going to stand. But this guy he's still in the fight trying to figure out how to win it.
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying to talk about masks, but we have to do it because it's important. And
I mean, that's why he started wearing masks. He's like, oh, fuck. I actually have to get rid of coronavirus to some degree. Like, I just can't keep rocking with this.
It's like Herman Cain passed away of natural causes. It's like, rest in peace, Herman Cain, who probably caught coronavirus at his Tulsa rally, at Trump's Tulsa rally. But I think I think we even overestimate this guy, Trump, when we say, like, does he hate democracy? He does not know what democracy is. If you sat him down, I don't think he could tell you what it is. Albeit, that's kind of a complicated question to ask. What is democracy? It's like,
this perfect system we have here in America. Look how well it has worked.
I think any sort of government is imperfect, but I think I prefer democracy for sure.
There are very odd parts of democracy in America, though. Where you just look at the Democratic Party platform overwhelmingly not voting for universal health care. And you're like, odd. Just odd for that to be your platform, considering it's very popular amongst not only your voters and potential voters, but Republicans. But overwhelmingly, the Dems not into it.
Well, there was a funny moment yesterday during the tech hearing where we had, these statesmen, these legislators, lawmakers were informed by people who understand maybe technology, social media, the effects of policy there, and that something is happening. These lawmakers sense it. They're going to take off the kiss the chef apron. The burgers have been grilled, and now they're going to grill the Zuck. And they're just so out of their league. And I'm like, oh, man, until time does its inevitable thing, until we get younger, until Zuck becomes the legislator, which is inevitable, we won't get a conversation about this because there's a disconnect between understanding of something that's new, like technology, to someone who's 75 years old and has, had different debates, have used their best years on other important debates,
Well, a huge issue here is this merging of the worlds of, finance, technology, and governance, where you're like, wait a minute, I'm sorry. So Zuck is the dude who stole an idea for a hot or not type of thing and turned it into a social media Goliath. And now he's going to be talking about how to run a country. Like that doesn't make any sense. And Bezos is obviously a very shrewd businessman. He's really smart.
He's a book collector. He started as a bookseller.
Right, but even if he is great at building a serpentine vampire squid, that's not who should have any say whatsoever in how we run a country. Donald Trump was a failed real estate baron, and he's running the country. I'm not here saying every politician needs to be a lifelong bureaucrat, but because that also has its downfalls. But man, we have a lot of people who are not qualified or not knowledgeable and have never done anything in their lives to prepare them for the stature that we are now allowing them to have.
Yeah, and I go with that really basic premise of if we throw money at politicians, tax money, and pay them well, we will get smart people who want those jobs. But if you have money, you got a leg up because you can campaign, you can afford to do this, you have influence. But if we pay the smart doctors and social economists real money to be lawmakers, then we could be looking at a better result.
I've always liked this theory.
It's a lose, yeah.
But it's fallen upon some deaf ears of late. Because when you brought it up with the cops, I've thought about it with the cops, and now I'm like, absolutely fucking not. When I think about pay the politicians more, I'm like, it won't change anything. I'll just give them more money. The idea of professionalizing these careers, I've always liked it in theory, but as over the last 6 months, I've just abandoned it thoroughly. I'm like, pay them less.
No, I still stand by it until a better idea comes through, like abolishing legislators. Is
well, we also learned that cops make $300,000 a year, so you're like, oh, they're dramatically overpaid, laughably overpaid, and they're still absolutely horrible.
I'm not willing to. I mean, this is a whole different world of debate. I think $300,000 sounds like a lot to me because that is a lot of money to me. But if you were a police chief, I'm in society, I'm well, that's a really important job, right?
In theory.
And that's what we're doing. We're talking in theory because we're not lawmakers. So we have to introduce these ideas to which the people we appoint have to extrapolate.
I'm
right?
saying people who have no education, no skills can use 2 months.
That's a little too general. They have an education, they have skills.
Police? They don't have to have a college degree. It takes them.
But
what is it? 8 weeks of training to become a cop? Come on.
Sure, it's a moving. I mean, it's not all education and not all skills are equal. But I mean, you can't just. You have to qualify. It's a low bar, understood. But to say that you can just be a cop is wrong.
I disagree. I just mean what it's. The criteria to not be a cop? I don't even know what that would be.
I mean, we know you hate cops, and yes, I'm with you on that. But
I mean, the idea that any knucklehead can be a cop is true.
Many knuckleheads become cops, but like you can't be an ex-convict. You have to be a citizen of America. You know, in order to be a cop, you basically have to qualify to vote.
Okay, then.
But I mean, but this is a big deal in our country. Like this is a big debate, right? Like who's allowed to vote. This is why we started this conversation, how to game the voting system.
Right. I'm just saying. I'm not going to be compelled into believing that cops deserve more money after we've seen their salaries come out. Because I actually believed, and I know the ones who are new on the force don't make much money. Like the entry level is not much. But with overtime, these guys are making a lot more money than people thought.
There's incentive for people to become cops, for sure.
I just had no idea that they were making, six figures routinely when you throw in overtime. I had no idea. I thought they were, plugging along at 40, 50K. I had no idea it was like $150,000 being a cop. Like, no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when we talk about money, we always have to talk about incentive and why certain people would want to be cops. And I think somebody would, like an ex-soldier, would definitely find that very appealing. A socioeconomist, somebody who's like really in shape and is really smart might look at 300K and be like, it's not worth it.
I don't know. To me, we just have to completely scrap this thing. Just throwing more money at the cops as they are right now. I feel like that's been exposed. And I'm not saying this to, go against your opinion. I'm saying I think it made sense, but what we've seen over the last couple months has kind of showed that is probably unlikely to change too much, considering how entrenched a lot of the problems are with American law enforcement.
Yeah, and the defund the police thing kind of died down, and I think as soon as we started thinking about it, it was a more complicated thing. And I'm on the side of like changing the whole damn system, like break it down and build it up slowly, piece by piece. But the abolish the police thing has certainly lost steam.
Disagree.
That's fair. I mean, there's no legislation and there's no chatter on my feed, but my feed is very catered to me. So
yeah, I don't think that idea has gone anywhere about defunding the police at all. I don't think people said, maybe not. I completely disagree. Like the media moved along, and
that's what I mean. It
but
doesn't.
That
get
has
the
nothing
attention.
to do with the idea.
Oh, the idea remains, but
because I look at it in the same way as universal health care. These are ideas that may have been fringe at one point, and everyone realized that it's our moral obligation to go in that direction, that we have to, and it's unacceptable that we don't. So even if we're not talking about universal health care right now, the perspective has changed. Like the Overton window has moved leftward on those issues with huge amounts of people, and we're going to start seeing politicians who come into office with those viewpoints. If you look at AOC and recent electees in New York, they are for defunding the police. We may get a mayoral candidate who's for defunding the police. So I think these ideas will take some time to trickle down to get to people who will then be part of the governmental infrastructure. But I think the Pandora's box is open on the idea of defunding the police in the same way that universal health care, that box is open.
I mean, the funny thing is Trump is the one keeping it wider open because his political strategy is to combat people who want to defund the police. And the more he talks about it, the more it makes sense. So he's just like, the left wants to take away cops. And he has this ad running on CNN constantly. It's just like, if you want to report a burglary, the wait time is 5 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to call a cop if I get burgled. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I will. It's hard to tell. But like...
Well, you would just do it because you want a police report so you can get like stuff insured.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
actually think it's going to be solved.
No, I'm terrified of cops. Terrified. But like, Trump is the one keeping this open. And I'm like, fine, man. Like, this is going to just boomerang back to you. Because it is a sound concept and a sound thing to think about. And him running on the idea that we should strengthen our police force is not reading the room at all.
Well, it's all he has. We were talking about before. Yeah. That's all his strategy is now, is like law and order and the problem of casting Biden as a young up-and-coming whippersnapper who's going to dismantle the police force when Biden's entire campaign is surrounded by Hillary Clinton people. Not even Obama people. It's all Clinton people. Which is, if you are a member of the left, just a laughably gross way that this all played out. Like, oh, we kind of just got Hillary's people back again? Oh, man. Come on.
I don't mind. Anything is better than what we got. And, Obama used George W. Bush staff members. And, there's the culture of politics is something we don't talk enough about. There's policy making, there's news, there's things that people actually do. And then I think with the culture of politics in D.C., we kind of immediately switch to conspiracy. Or not to even take it to that far. We almost seem like we're powerless to discuss it because it's like a structure in which it's impermeable. But as we're seeing lately, it's more porous than we think.
Well, what no one in D.C. wants to talk about is that it's so dominated by careerists.
Yeah, if you want to be a politician, you can make it happen.
I mean the whole structure itself, not necessarily just the politicians, the whole people around them, the media, the advisors, everybody. Okay, I'm a Hillary guy. I'm going to try to get a job with Obama. Okay. Oh, Biden. All right, I'm back with them. What about Buttigieg? Oh, I'm working for him now. Like, it's just the recycling of all these people, and it's all the same ideas. And that's why it's hard to change. And, without getting into Bernie stuff, Bernie wasn't running a campaign that was as populated by those guys. And, like, it's just a recycling. Trump's guys, Bush's guys. That's why Bush's guys are all talking shit about Trump, because they got pushed out.
I mean, this is in every field, right? That's why we have Tim Hardaway Jr.,
Yes.
Glenn Robinson III. Like, even art-wise, like there are now daughters and sons of famous artists making art, and it is cultural, because if I was in a household that was involved in politics, I certainly would not do what I do. And like our kids are probably going to do a podcast, man, the most ethical, influential podcast. But, yeah, I mean, I like the disruption, but I don't expect the disruption.
But that's why it's this, parade of people who worked under the Bushes are like, this has gone too far. Well, yeah, you were cool when it was Bush and Cheney, but because you're not getting a paycheck right now, it's time for you to write an op-ed in the New York Times about how, this is beyond the pale, and now you're a Biden guy because you have a better chance of getting a job under Biden.
Yeah,
because Biden's basically a Republican. You would not be doing this shit if it was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when Trump was rising to prominence during the campaign, the idea of politics as entertainment was in the forefront, because he was an entertainer who was trying to enter the world of politics. He is the ultimate disruptor, and he just doesn't align with us or most of America. But he is the ultimate punk guy, right? He's Luke Skywalker fighting the Empire. It's just not our guy at all. But like the idea of entertainment and politics,
I mean, he definitely isn't at all in that way.
Well,
like his politics are exactly Republican Party politics. They're more overtly racist, but he's not an actual populist in any regard. He is a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. He just wasn't one of their dudes.
Well,
he wasn't a careerist Republican, so they didn't like him if you were part of that existing, architecture of the party. His politics, that's why they're all like, oh, actually, we love this dude. His politics are right down the middle Republican batshit stuff.
I mean, I think he actually veers from conservative ideas. Of course, he has support in the Senate. In his viewing of the Constitution, which is the premise, I think the biggest premise of it.
Like how? I'm not trying to
I know
you.
I was waiting for this.
I'm legitimately curious what you mean.
Destabilizing our government, for one. Executive order. I think a lot of these politicians don't. Conservatives appreciate any of that. His economic policy is dicey. His healthcare policy is dicey. Like, these are all things
they're all straight Republican rigmarole, down the middle. If you look at like healthcare, exactly Republican. Economics, like the most hard body Republican. You know, that tax bill wasn't his shit. It was Republican Party stuff. That's all I mean. It's like I don't think you can look at him and say he deviates in any meaningful way from the Republican Party. He's just more racist. That's kind of the difference.
Or he's a poorer performer. And I think the conservatives that I think are level-headed, or we're not talking about the extremes here, don't agree with him. And, you can just turn on the TV and, yeah, there's conservative voices who bristle at his every move on Twitter. And I think that they are Republicans registered. And I don't want to talk about him in terms of politics because he's like an outsider. He's out of the conversation of politics. He's a free radical. He's like a cancerous thing where it's like he's not a part of the fabric of what we have known,
So yeah, I disagree. I think he is exactly what we have known, and this was the culmination. And I'm not just parroting that because some Bush administration guy wrote that in an op-ed the other day, but I think he is the natural apex of the Republicans. I don't know what's the best way of describing it, but the way they sort of plunged towards the gutter, because they've always had this sort of tricky way of reconciling economics that only helped out the rich while trying to win on flag burning or gay marriage. And he's done a better job doing that, but he is really distilled, right? He's a actual or close to billionaire or whatever, how much money he has, who has no beliefs whatsoever and has just replaced it with kind of scapegoating. I mean, he's anti-abortion as a president. Like, that's ludicrous. That's not his belief, but he but that's what I mean about falling in line with Republican stuff. Like, he's just like, yeah, he walks around holding a Bible. Like, that's Donald Trump.
I mean,
I believe couldn't name a Bible verse.
If like the liberals or the Democrats are a cup of coffee and he's orange juice, I don't think he's distilled into a cup. I think the cup spilled, but he's still orange juice, which is to your point. I think he definitely works better. He's not coffee. But to me, the orange juice is everywhere. And I think the people who created the orange juice, who poured it, are trying to clean it up and put it back in that cup.
You know what? You know who else is trying to put stuff back in the cup? The NBA. Yeah, the season starts today, man. Well, I'm sorry, the season restarts today. So my question here is, like, we got 8 games of kind of glorified scrimmages, really. People getting back into shape. Some jockeying for seeding amongst lower teams. A few teams actually will decide whether they get into the playoffs or not via the results of the next 8 games. Then we got the playoffs. What do you want to happen? What's your dream scenario here?
Beyond the big, everyone staying healthy, everyone being COVID free, and after that, in basketball terms, man, I am thinking about LeBron James mostly. I want to see his greatness on the highest level right now. I think, not to get hokey, but I think we need him, man. Like, I want LeBron James on my screen. I don't want Giannis. I love Philly, but like, I want to see what I think of as the NBA perform right now. That would be really comforting and joyous.
The NBA needs LeBron James to be in this finals, and they kind of need him to win it. I don't mean that the league will suffer if that doesn't happen, but that's what they need, because LeBron James is the biggest spokesperson for the league right now in terms of, right now his organization is helping to raise money to pay off people's fines from the court system in Florida so that people can get their right to vote back. Like, LeBron has been the conscience of the league in a lot of ways. So to have him, its best player at this moment, and being political and talking about Breonna Taylor and talking about justice and equality, LeBron in the finals is so much better than LeBron getting knocked out by like the Nuggets in like the second round.
Jokic.
It's just so much better to have LeBron there as like the paragon of the game
Yeah.
for as long as possible.
I mean, we've never seen this league as theater more than it is now, right? Even in its optics. But you're right. Like, I think Silver is crossing his fingers. I assume he's crossing his fingers, hoping LeBron can get on that platform. Yeah, we don't want to see Jamal Murray in the finals, even though he has a good chance of getting there. We don't even want to see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the finals. It's, I think, LeBron in the West, and from the East, like, I think because of, we don't want to see Giannis. I don't think as a NBA vibe. I think we either want to see Simmons or regretfully the media wants to see your boy Tice in the finals.
I could see, as long as you have LeBron, any finals matchup is redeemable. Because if you have LeBron versus Giannis, as much as I dislike the Bucks style of play, and I find them monumentally bland, just brutalism, which I like architecturally, just less in basketball. Yeah, I actually kind of like it in basketball, just not with the Bucks. But if it's LeBron against Giannis, that is enticing. You have the two MVP candidates. You have sort of the current older gray-bearded reigning king, and then the potential usurper to his throne. Like, that is very compelling. Giannis versus LeBron in the finals. My fear is the Lakers losing and getting something like Jazz Bucks and it being a disgrace.
I mean, Nuggets Bucks would. I love Jokic. I love Jokic so much. Yeah, the Jazz would be the okay. The better question is, what is your worst case scenario?
It's Jazz Bucks is the worst.
Jazz Bucks is close, man.
Because as much as I would die hearing about the Celtics making the finals, as much as I would literally perish,
it would be kind of fun, though, right?
The Celtics are fun to watch.
Yeah, yeah.
I like them as a team.
Fighting the BMM is a life. It's a vibe.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with Boston, but it would be excruciating naturally. But as a product, Boston is a fairly fun team to watch. They run tons of pick and rolls. They've got a lot of athletic players.
Kemba is a star. Yeah,
Kemba's
I like
sick. Tatum is a solid fourth option.
Yeah, can Tatum see playoff minutes? Only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, or will he average 12 points on 36% shooting like he did last year? A young journeyman just finding his way in this crazy mixed up world.
He added 5 points to his playoff average. Incredible. I agree with you, man. There's potential for I can commiserate No Sinbin with other leagues in the NBA when they see like tertiary cities, no disrespect to tertiary cities, make it to these stages, because you're like, do we want to see St. Louis in the World Series again? Absolutely not. Do they deserve to be there? Absolutely.
Well, that's the thing with the Bucks, is that the Bucks don't even have a novelty because they have the best record in basketball. They have the best defense. They have a very good offense. They have the likely MVP.
Defensive Player of the Year, Brook Lopez.
Exactly. Or Robin Lopez. Maybe both of them. Like a duo, perhaps. The two most important defensive players on that team. Mm-hmm. Stats don't lie. Mm-hmm. But if you put the Bucks there, you don't even get the novelty of it being a surprise. And not only are they stylistically bleak, but they're also the overwhelming favorite to come out of the East. So it's not even the same as if, like, wow, that's a surprise. The Raptors managed to do it. They're back. That's crazy. I didn't think that would occur.
Yeah.
Like the Bucks are bad in every regard in that way.
This is kind of the only time I can recall where I don't want chaos. Like, I kind of just want to see LeBron James stomp his way through to another trophy ceremony.
I mean, as a Sixers fan, I obviously would love for Philly to win a championship, and it would be amazing if they played the Lakers just for the star power, just to have those matchups, Simmons against
that would be
LeBron,
the most fun.
And Embiid against Davis. Like, those are just two really cool matchups. In my mind, the two best duos in the league. especially in terms of like diversity, a big guy, or I mean they're both big dudes, but just like skill set wise, because as good as the Clippers are, I do find Paul George and Kawhi
Right, you don't like them
redundant
either.
in a bad way,
Right.
but they're kind of similar. They're both ISO scorers who play great wing defense, like
Mm-hmm.
super disruptive, are good passers, but not exceptional ones. Like they're just kind of the same.
They're apex
player.
competent. Apex competency is great. There's no like they lack a little bit of personality, and I know that's Kawhi's knock at him off the court, but on the court he also lacks personality.
And Paul George is sort of similar in that way.
Yeah, and the great players. Underrated Paul George, I think, still. But you're right. Optically, to me,
right,
they're
I think
not
you're
as
talking about
cool.
a top 5 and a top 10 player. Like they are sick.
Yeah,
But I just, as far as skill set goes, I'm more entertained by like Embiid, Simmons, and LeBron and AD, just because there's a more of a differentiation of skill sets within those duos than the Clippers have.
it's more of a chess match. Yeah, for sure.
Man, I think Utah Bucks would be the worst for me.
Yo, what about our
Clippers
guys?
Bucks is kind of bad.
Houston, I kind of want to see Harden go off.
I would love to see the Rockets against the Lakers in a Western Conference Finals. I think that would be
That's my favorite.
amazing. I mean, any of those three teams is going to be an incredibly fun series, whether you have
Yeah.
Lakers, Clippers, Houston. Like, let those guys all play each other, and I'm
that's
in.
awesome.
Those
Yeah.
are wonderful, wonderful series.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? Like all this debate about parity and salary caps trying to kind of level the playing field of the NBA. I'm so grateful that didn't work because a few of these matchups are so tasty, man. It's like plucking ripe fruit off a tree. Yeah, any combination of these teams in stressful games is going to be really awesome.
And then the Rockets abandoning a traditional center is so fun,
PJ Tucker.
especially when your potential rival could be Anthony Davis. Like, it's great that you're just saying, okay, Anthony Davis is one of the greatest power forwards who's ever lived. We're going to put Robert Covington on him. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
I fuck with it so heavy.
And I love the Rockets because it's like, oh, we're going to live and die with Harden and his usage and Russ and his usage. And if Harden doesn't shoot, it doesn't make enough threes, we're going to lose. So we're just trying to get him to this threshold, you know? And like, I love that gamesmanship. And that's why I kind of love the Bucks. But like, it's like sort of like a video game. It's like a lot of things can happen, but if I get to this point, I can defeat the final boss. The final boss has no chance against me. And Maury has made that gamble, and it probably won't end up in his favor, but it's a cool gamble to make.
The Rockets are, to me, the most must-watch team in the NBA after they dumped Capella. And it's, look, I really like Robert Covington. I like PJ Tucker. I like Harden. I like Russ. And I find Russ's transformation from being everybody's MVP to being in sort of a universal doghouse where everyone's like, his rebounds are a fraud. He can't shoot. He's inefficient. No one wants to play with him. To kind of being reborn as a modern weapon on a team that spreads the floor out, and he is now the non-shooter, and putting your non-shooter on the ball, which Philly also does, to me is like, that's how you hide them. It's the best way to hide them.
Yep.
Put them on the ball.
Yep.
And then shooters are everywhere. And Russ is really, really tough to stop. When he's not taking pull-up jumpers or threes, he's not someone that you can necessarily stay in front of if there's no one in the paint.
What a lonely place Russ must be in, right? Like, he
But
has
not now, right? Because
No.
he's crushing it.
Crushing, but-
his numbers like down the last month were just bonkers.
bonkers, but we don't talk about him as an MVP candidate, right? Like, he is having as good a season as he has, I believe, when he averaged a triple-double. Kind of a shaky triple-double, but he still did it. And I think when I say lonely, I assume he might be like, why don't people talk about me in the same breath as my teammate? Like, we're peers on the court, but it's Harden's team. And, you know, he's new to the team, but like, why don't we talk about him in the MVP voting? And he's like, I've been awesome straight through, and you guys told me I was the best at one point, and I haven't changed, but everything else has changed around me.
I mean, him just stopping taking threes really was
Huge.
that just made all the difference. And when you got rid of Capella, I mean, his field goal percentage in February was 55%. 55%. And his three-point shooting got better too, but he only took 20, I think, in the whole month. But 55% field goal shooting for the guy that we've always said is like deeply inefficient. Like, no, people were just using him wrong.
Right. Like, he's not as inefficient as we think. He's been weaponized. And James Harden is kind of a solid defender, but he gets a knock of being a weakness. And to me, the Houston Rockets are like feast or famine. You can kind of watch them with like an either or coin flip kind of mentality, because either it clicks or it doesn't, and that depends on matchup. It depends on luck and performance. But if everything rolls their way, they can easily win a championship.
I mean, Russ averaged 33 points, 7 boards, 6 assists on a true shooting percentage of almost 60% in was it January, February, whatever. Not the month that they canceled the the league in, the one before that.
Yeah.
Those are unbelievable numbers.
Yeah.
They're just unbelievable.
Yeah.
33, 7, and 6 on elite efficiency. That's way better than anything Russ ever did when he was in OKC. Yeah. He wasn't putting up stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe more assists and rebounds, but when you put in that efficiency with Russ, that is an absolute nuclear weapon.
Yeah. And I think the NBA fan base has a little bit of Harden Russ fatigue, and we've powered through the LeBron fatigue, and he's helped us because he's moved around to different teams, and LA certainly helps recover from that that illness maybe. But like, I think we don't talk about the Rockets enough because we're tired of talking about the Rockets, but they are right there, I believe. And, we love them because of many, many reasons. But it's interesting to see a team like Philly not have fatigue. They're definitely a hot button issue. And to see a team like Boston trying to create kind of energy. And now we have actual games, which is interesting.
I mean, the perception of this needing an asterisk will certainly change if it ends up being the Nuggets over the Heat.
Right.
Like, okay, no. It doesn't matter. If LeBron wins it, it counts. If the Celtics win it, it certainly counts. The Sixers win it, you'll have the BMM battling against it. Right. But if we get some off-brand finals, everyone's just going to disregard it. Like, yeah, but it was the COVID championship. Like, whatever, man. Yes, the Heat won it. Great.
Like, to be honest,
the Heat beat Portland. Yeah, it was nuts. I'm sorry. What?
Oh, I'm so rested. Welcome to Cookies Hoops. Ben Dietrich, who never takes a day off.
Oh, sorry. I think I just got bitten by a spider.
But I think the scenario you're talking about is true, unless LeBron wins. That is the only outcome I think casual fans will accept.
Just MJ. Time to put the documentary in about like how the COVID season wasn't real.
Yeah. Right. Because like, if an amazing player like Jokic or Harden or Ben Simmons win, all like top 5 players, maybe Jokic, casual fans would just be like, that's fraudulent. Was LeBron too tired? Did he have COVID? Did someone test him? Did he test positive for COVID? Unless it affirms our belief going into it, which is LeBron James seems like he's the best player in the world, which is true.
Fitting in with how annoying the Bucks are, they'll probably just win it. And we'll be like, yeah, I guess they're the best team. Giannis is really good. Okay, moving along. When do we start the new season?
Your Bucks hatred energy is so strong. I'm for it, man. You've convinced me through your persistent hatred of the Bucks. I'm like, yeah, they do suck.
Thank you. I can't convince you of anything else of my great takes, but at least I've gotten you on the right side of history with disliking the Bucks.
Giannis, not on my watch.
I'm anti-Clippers unless they're playing a fun team. Clippers-Bucks is just atrocious, but Clippers-Sixers is fun.
That is very fun.
Like Lakers-Clippers is fun. Clippers versus a bad opponent is very, very dark.
Is there a team in the East other than Philly that you want to see?
I do like watching the Heat. I think the Heat are kind of cool.
Jimmy.
They seem to be the only option besides Philly. I can't say I would like to see Boston. I do find Boston entertaining, but I just can't. That's a bridge too far.
No. People say retirement is like a quiet life, but just look at Jimmy Butler.
It has suited him.
Yeah, he's living his best overall life in retirement.
I mean, who else? I think the Raptors are a cute team, and I really like some of their players, but I just find them kind of cute.
Siakam becoming a better player without playing any games has been a true stroke of BMM genius.
Because, right, you look at the rest of the East, you're like, Indiana, no. Like, that's a non-starter.
No, get out of here. No. Oh, shout out to Miles Turner, who I love.
Brooklyn is running out a phantom squad. Washington's running out the generals. And Orlando. Like, the East really has to be. I just don't think Toronto has the horses to do it. They are a fun team. I love how they have unorthodox defenses. I do really like what they've done and really respect Toronto. Mm-hmm. I just can't deal with that team being in the finals. Like, it just doesn't. I'm not convinced. They don't feel like a finals team in any way. They don't have, a superstar on that team.
Oh, Kyle Lowry's a superstar, I think.
He is awesome.
Yeah, but I know what you mean, right? Like, Siakam, I think, is awesome and a bit overvalued when we talk about it just because he has that hardware. He's having arguably a worse season than he did last season and the year before. That comes with higher usage.
I was about to say, I think we would say he's having a better season when you look at his numbers because of his role is a lot larger. Mm-hmm. He's taking different kinds of shots. He now has more responsibility, but he's not a superstar. He's like a third-tier star.
Yeah. He Luol Deng? Only we'll find out. But I love Van Vliet. I think they have interesting pieces, but they don't strike me. Maybe this is my Canada bias, but they don't strike me as on the tier with the Sixers. That said, if the Sixers beat the Raptors, it'd be like, whoa, that was a pretty impressive win.
Well, the Raptors do have some ways to flummox Philly defensively.
Mm-hmm. That's a bad matchup.
I think Philly can handle them for the most part because Siakam has absolutely nothing for Simmons. Nothing. He can't score on him.
Different tier of player.
He can't do. He just can't score on him.
Yeah,
it's a wrap.
Yo, Simmons' defense is wild.
But Embiid does not score on Marc Gasol.
Yeah,
like he just doesn't. Marc Gasol knows how to play him. He's smart. He's huge. He's strong. He keeps him away from the basket. He dares him to shoot mid range.
He lulls him with his Gen X tranquility.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a vibe. He seems like a great guy.
It's happened enough times when they've matched up that you can't say it's coincidental. Joe was sick. That may be true, but even healthy Joe does not really get it rocking against Marc Gasol.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Marc
Gasol's a Hall of Famer.
Defensive Player of the Year, like no shame.
Yeah.
Posting up is hard. Marc Gasol is a giant human, not easy.
Yeah.
But I do think Toronto kind of runs out of talent in that matchup. Corey Brewer style.
Wow.
Like they might be able to get to the rim. I just don't think they have like that top notch talent. But again, Lowry's really good. Siakam's good. Marc Gasol's good. I do think there may be an advantage in some degrees to these older guys, like maybe Horford or Gasol, who were able to take some time off. And as long as they stayed in shape and were like professional about it and, didn't just sort of collapse like everyone else just by eating, white bean stew every single day.
One pot cooking, baby.
Joe Ingles pantry chefs. But, as long as those guys are in there, I think you'll see maybe a little, spark in the step of dudes like Horford or Marc Gasol.
Yeah. Do you think motivation's going to be an issue? Do you think we're going to see the best versions of these guys?
Yeah.
I think so too. Competition is real.
Yeah, it's hard not to be a loony to make it to this level.
Yeah,
like you have
exactly.
to be so competitive. I know that is a cliche of like wanting it more, but you kind of do to be on that far side of the bell curve unless you're like 7 feet tall.
Well, this is our whole argument, right? Like Michael Jordan gets on his soapbox and he's like, I wanted it more. Here's a 10-part documentary series about me wanting it more than everybody. And then you look at like a role player and what they had to do to get to the league, I'm like, oh, dude, you want it more than Jordan for sure. If we're doing this, right? Like, you're right. Everyone, it's no accident that people get to this point. If you think about the most relaxed, vibed player, I'm saying vibe a lot on this pod, but like, if you take the most relaxed guy, let's say it's Lou Williams because he's in our head. Oh no, he is like a sociopath on the court, man. He cares more than anybody.
Yeah, I just think, oh
man.
no, the Rona. Put
Do I have
Quo in the
Rona?
bubble. Oh,
Did I break the bub? Did I breach
the
the
Quo
bub?
burger bubble breached.
That take almost took me out.
But yeah, just the same way athleticism and height and other attributes make being in the NBA are necessities to being in the NBA. Being someone who is very driven in many cases is a very valuable attribute. Just working harder and being kind of a psycho. It helps you. It helps you. Like, there's only 300 of these jobs on the planet, and there are millions and millions and millions of people who want it. It's not like just being a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want to be a doctor. Cool, go be a doctor. Just go to medical school. You'll come out. You'll be a doctor.
Right.
It's like, no, I want to be an NBA player. That's finite.
Oh my God, yes. And all you have to do is think about the Checkers Challenge and some of those players there. Even a distillation of the NBA to the Burger Bub, you're just like, whoa, these are some excellent players. And Steph Curry's like that meme, that SpongeBob meme looking out the window.
I've said this many times, and I'm just going to be redundant. It's just like thinking of how many guys I've played with that are awesome at basketball. Awesome. Big, strong, fast, reverse dunking, knocking down threes.
Cookie's classic heroes.
Guys who were that good at hoops and like didn't get time on a college team.
Yeah.
You're just like, it doesn't even make any sense. How good these dudes are.
Yeah.
It just doesn't even make sense. When you see someone who's like 6'6", just gnarly at basketball, better than anyone, and you're like, this guy didn't get playing time on like a D2 team. What the fuck is that?
Dude, Josh Smith isn't in the league. Ty Lawson isn't in the league. Like, this is an elite group of people mentally and skill-wise and all that. Same thing. But, and that's, that's where I get kind of wistful about this. Like, we got to protect these guys because they are all unicorns. And I think playing games, there's a risk to it. I'm very excited to see tonight's games. I want this season to restart in a way, but I still stand by the idea that I think it's too dangerous. And these, every life is valuable, but like, these are the people we talk about and care about in this hobby of watching the NBA. And like, there's a little too much danger involved here.
I mean, for me, the issue now seems to be less about danger only because all of America is really dangerous. So
real.
like those guys being at home is probably more dangerous. It's definitely more dangerous than them being in the bub.
That could be true.
But to me, it was also just the timing. That to me was the sticking point. It wasn't cancel the season and never play basketball again. It was like, why are we doing this as numbers are going up in a place where numbers are going up during civil rights protests? Like, why are we insisting on doing it now? That was my issue. So, yeah, all systems go so far. I'm not that psyched for basketball in some ways. I'm psyched to see these guys, but I do have like a sour taste in my mouth about the way this all happened and the timing and the idea that, young black men who are, trying to be active in what's going on across America and some of the most widespread protests in our history were like bullied into going into a dome away from their families to play basketball.
Yeah.
Like, bitter taste in my mouth over that shit.
Yeah. And it turns out, and I agree for sure, it turns out the take at the time when they announced this bub is kind of turning true, which is like, maybe by August BLM will have lost a little. There will be BLM fatigue, and maybe this platform will bring it back. And there's potential for that because, on the news feeds that I watch, CNN, MSNBC, Fox a little bit, like, we're not really talking about BLM as much as we are about Trump and coronavirus. So maybe this is an opportunity for the NBA to lead this again. And we're seeing all the announcing like slogans that people have chosen for their jerseys, and like all these gestures are not lost on us, right? Like this is kind of cool.
Education reform.
Did a famous gamer choose that? The
All
world's most
gamer
famous gamer.
lives matter.
When I read that, I was like, I love the NBA because sports doesn't quite matter in the same way as other things, and it is true to itself over and over. It's like, what's Gordon Hayward going to put on his jersey? Is it going to be Black Lives Matter?
But education reform, in his mind, can also be easily, and I'm sure is,
Yeah.
viewed as a conservative talking point.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
for
that's
sure.
what's wild about it is he's like education reform. Look at college campuses and cancel culture. Like the voices of the right wing are being stymied all over the place. Like education reform.
Yeah, and I don't think Gordon Hayward seems like whatever, a pretty neutral guy.
I don't know.
I don't know enough about his politics.
I think he followed like Charlie Kirk on Twitter. Or
Oh,
something.
there was
without-
that.
Yeah, and without saying you necessarily subscribe to the beliefs of who you follow, the fact that he's a gamer and he follows Charlie Kirk and was from Indiana and played
chose
in Utah
Boston.
and then chose Boston, it adds up. You know what, though? I will say this. As much as his contract is an albatross, he was pretty good this year.
Yeah, for sure.
You hate to see it, but he was pretty good this year.
Not as good as Kyrie was last year.
No. Kyrie's a superstar.
Yeah.
But Hayward was all right this year.
Yeah.
He's efficient, takes pretty good care of the ball.
Yeah.
He's not a good defender, but he's not awful. He was good.
And I only bring up Kyrie because when Kyrie got all that gruff from the BMM, Hayward was underperforming coming out of an injury. But it feels like the BMM have maybe given up on Hayward a little bit and switched to their other hero, Martell Webster. But I think Hayward seems to be not in the favor of the tiny green hand anymore. We don't hear a lot about him.
I think that's true. I also do think his political stance and his gamer shit has sort of turned people off as well.
Is it more of an indictment on him that he follows Charlie Kirk or that he's a gamer? So our boomers like you're too extreme, right? Or you're too much of a nerd.
Oh, I think it's the intersection that he just feels very like 4channy. It's like the gamer right wing. I think it's the alt-right connection between those things. Gamergate, alt-right. It's not like, oh, he's a nerd or is he conservative? It's like he is Gamergate as the NBA player.
I know. Poor gamers who were co-opted by the alt-right because they used Twitch as a platform because it wasn't regulated, right? So they started creating their chat rooms on a gaming platform that people weren't paying attention to.
Poor guys. More on that next week on The Perfect Pod.
Cookies.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.